Thank you, thank you. God, that was sick. I don't know how to follow that. Hello, so as you now know, my name's Biz, and as much as I might wish it, my day job's not this. I actually pay my bills as a data analyst, which means I glean trends using statistics, collate multiple single instances to investigate relationships, and accept or reject a null hypothesis. Translation for those who don't speak mathematics, I'm paid to make educated, backed by data guesses. Not super poetic, but there's power in it. Since the rapid expansion of technification, the so-called data revolution, this kind of thing's shaping our every experience. I mean, what was the first thing you did this morning? If you're anything like me, you were straight on a screen, mindlessly scrolling through some kind of feed that's been perfectly curated based on what you liked previously. Maybe, having faffed through 2 or 3 apps, you check Google Maps to see if your tram's on track, which you'll pay for with a contactless tap, and get Spotify to fill the gap you lacked imagination to on your commute. All the while snooped on by CCTV, so that, if you're like me, within an hour of being awake, you've left a data lake in your wake, which goes beyond what bands you rate but pertains to location, your finances, your face. And there's power in that. Come on, we've all been had by personalised ads. I know I have. But did you hear about the girl whose shopping gave an algorithm enough information to deduct her situation? Indicative of a bun in the oven, Target's targeted ads let her dad know it was coming. He knew before she'd even consulted Clearblue. It's true. We're so oblivious to the power we have, just going about our day-to-days training systems to be creeps, or in the case of Kent Police, inherently bad. They've been using this tech called predpol, which tells them where to find the next criminal. By clustering existing convictions, its systems make predictions which are said to be 10 times more efficient than random patrols. And since it's not based in social divisions, they said its fairness is a given, but the police's fairness isn't. They consistently arrested those they thought suspicious, which is a very good proxy for not white or privileged, meaning the data training the system is systematically racist. And guess what? As the tech got more of these so-called crimes convicted, it reinforced its logic and became more of a bigot, because without a conscience, algorithms don't question patterns. Without regulation, they just proliferate oppression. Now that is power in action. And we're handing over the reins. These days, so much of our lives is automated. We've delegated task after task to computational processes. More efficient than us, machines maximize profit. But the question is, who's profiting off it? Because I'll be honest, I haven't a clue what goes on in these algorithmic black boxes. And I'm an analyst. I'm salaried to know it. But I do know this. If something is free, chances are you're the commodity. So manage your cookies. Declare your preferences. That data lake you've made, it's yours. Take back some power and choose what it's for. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's a joy to be here today. Like I say, this is not how I pay my bills. I wish it were. We spend so much of our time, being in these spaces. We spend so much of our time on someone else's time, on a calendar that is based off half the population. The 9-5 is based off those with a penis. Those of us who run off a 28-day cycle, our inner calendar doesn't match this. So I thought, I'd kind of try and speak to that, because for me, a chunk of every month, I become someone else. It can be a week or two where I leave myself. As my womb grows thick to receive an egg that's not inseminated, I'm left to shed my sense of self with the lining of my uterus. They say there's healing in having the vocabulary to describe how you're feeling, but receiving a piece of paper with premenstrual dysphoric disorder, or PMDD for brevity, after years of pleading, felt like a perfunctory soliloquy of potential remedies. With little research to lean on, there was not a lot doc could do for me. Vexed by the limited options offered, I sought lexic medicine independently. I wanted a word to describe how my hormones affect me, and thanks to Harry Baker's bee poem, I came upon floxinoxynihilopilification, which sounds fictitious. Might as well say I suffer from supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, but the doctor's lack of knowledge and unsympathetic approach has meant I found solace in this self-diagnosis. Floxinoxynihilopilification is 4 words brought together with the suffix of making, 4 words that share a definition and through synonymous multiplication coalesce to even less. It's the ultimate description of worthlessness. For me, the etymology perfectly encapsulates PMDD. You see, a floxy is a tuft of wool. And in those bleak weeks, I feel that small, helpless and emotionally vulnerable, a soft could send me down the rabbit hole to retread that well-tread thread of thought that I am unlovable. Noki, word 2, means of little value. And each month I'm robbed of mirth, not worth any laughter. I become subsumed by darkness, retreat to a happiness vacuum where I lose sight of the light in every day. The pockets of joy become shallow, impenetrable, stitched up like those on women's jeans, a reference to something I used to have a hand in, but now can barely see. Nihili, word 3, is the genitive form of nihilum, and crops up in modern parlance as the root of nihilism, the belief that life is meaningless. And in those weeks, I know this feeling, it's all consuming. I'll sit rocking in my room, ruminating on why life is not worth living. Finally, a pili is minuscule, tiny and bacterial, a microbiological hair, and I'm with it there. In my luteal phase, I become primordial. Dr. Jekyll no more, I'm Mr. Hyde, and viciously self-critical. Floxy nocky nihilipilification is the perfect word for my endocrine condition. It summarizes how I feel so succinctly, no need for further explanation, but not just that. It factors in the oxymoron. For a word that captures worthlessness, it's long. It's like linguistic recognition, that in those weeks, I am not me, but a walking contradiction. Thank you. Thanks, yeah, sorry. Started with a couple of bleak ones, but it gets better from here, I promise. So I've had a bit of a crazy week. This is 3 nights on the trot of doing poetry, which is an absolute joy. And I was in London on Thursday performing as part of Spit Nights, which if you've not heard of it, go check it out. They're platforming some really wonderful poets. It was absolute joy to be there, in part because so many of my friends are based in London, and so many of them never leave that godforsaken city. So they know that I do poetry in like the Nebula North, but it was really nice to share that with people who've never seen it before. And one of them who was there was my younger brother. He's never seen me do poetry, really. And his is a sofa that I very often surf in London. He's saved me many times. And he has a room that is the same everywhere. It's the same stuff sort of like exploded in a space. And one of the things that he has is this picture by Modigliani, an Italian painter sculptor from like late 19th, early 20th century, who, if you don't know, was known for painting these women with like, who look really long. They kind of look like they've been stretched only in that direction. And every time I stay, I make him remind me who Modigliani is. As I ooh and ah at the same old pictures of our faces at various ages, same old posters, postcards, random bits of art gifted by some old fart up the road, show tickets, bus tickets, train tickets all stickered together to form an orange wallpaper, beneath which empty backy packets form a pile of purposeless plastic, a shrine to his habit. Their unrecyclable crunch a lament to the environment, to the shrine of horrific images that make them no less addictive. They fall under their own weight into a tray that's filled with loose cash and the sort of stuff that you don't really know what to do with, that sort of just accumulates in your pockets, like spare buttons, last bits of chewing gum, earrings, rings, broken bracelets, hair grips, hair clips, hairbands, baggy filters, paper stamps, lighters, which mostly don't work, a work pass, a past lover's note. Every so often, a pair of sunglasses distract and cause a pause. I'll, of course, give them a try, and if they're worth it, haggle for a global price. What if I gave you mine? You know, the fake Ralph Lauren's I bought in Belgium. What? The ones made for children? Yeah, fuck no, Biz, I hate them. Before I cast my eyes back to the live blue tack on the wall, take a step back, remove my rose-tinted view, step back from it all to realise how much more of it is new, that there are ever-widening gaps between the bits I've contributed to. I know we've both grown, but in that moment, it's always acute. So every time I stay, I make him remind me who Modigliani is, pretend to forget so that some things won't change, and the long face can be left to the lady sellotaped to his wall. Thank you. Yeah, so I did this set in London and I realized that I shared 5 poems and 3 of them referenced smoking, which was not my finest hour. Because smoking's gross, innit? Financially, it's a definite deficit. An outgoing with growing bad credit, a carcinogenic that leaves you fetid, stinking like an ashtray with fingertips that are nicotine stained, and I'm ashamed to say I indulge in the habit. I only recently conceded it's not a passing characteristic, to later be chaptered with other things I did whilst young and stupid. Nah, this is more than a dabble in the masochistic. I admit it, folks. I smoke. I'm addicted. It's indefensible and unbelievable that it still feels kind of cool. Subversive. I swear it's ingrained in my psyche. See smoking, read creativity, an inclination for anarchy, hedonistic tendencies. But then again, it's hardly surprising considering we've been drip-fed this narrative since the early 60s, when the tobacco industry clocked post-war women kept their jobs and co-opted the gender role shift as an opportunity to double their market. Worked to change what we, the consumer, associate with the lethal product. Through aggressive and repetitive messages, they edited our collective memory to forget it leads to death, and instead appealed to desire, conspired to build this idea that smoking means power. You all know the scene. Attractive woman takes drag from cigarette, turns head and says something assertive. Even miming it feels seductive, and it's completely constructed. Classic consumer capitalism, shift the socio-political condition with subliminal messaging, mold our minds to associate cigs with dominance, sex, rebellion, speak to our individualism, sell us what we cannot have and a packet of silver Bensons, live the Marlborough way and live in freedom. It's a Faustian bargain. Trade your lungs for rungs on an imagined ladder. My gullibility doesn't escape me. Don't kid a kidder. Smoking's not cool. It's not big. And it's not clever. But nicotine just hits different with cognitive dissonance, doesn't it? That mild discomfort at knowing that what you're doing has absolutely zero benefits. In fact, it's almost entirely negatives. The main incentive is symbolic status invented to make profit, but my cough's not yet productive enough to make me stop it. I find the ritual of rollies is almost meditative. Tuck in with a thumb and seal with a lick, then once lit, reconnect with your breath for just a minute. Try to forget about the toxins in it. Take each toke with a turn-blind eye and indulge in a rat-backy gift of time to self amongst the hectic. Satiate your cravings, let your brain fog lift, and have a moment to be selectively reflective. Now, I can tell by your faces who's also gaslighting themselves on a daily basis. I'll see you outside in a bit. We can meet with Mephistopheles and puff on our cancer sticks. Thank you. Yeah, smoking's not great, huh? And it's funny, the battles we choose. I found myself in... Do you know the shop next to Eastern Bloc in Steve-O Square? I was there the other night, and I only ever end up there after a sort of magic number of pints, when I'll pop in for Baccy's filter and a light. Having lost that internal battle with the ciggy already, I decided to try and die on the hill of what packet's picture I'd have in my pocket. I didn't want the first amber leaf with the teeth. I have enough anxiety about those already. The man at the counter entertained my request for another. Option 2, the gangrenous foot, was a step too far, so I asked politely if he'd roll again. The third preferred pack had the tracheostomy that looks like a bum, which is okay. But I asked if he'd see if there was an impotence one, where there's a man stood like this. Since, as someone without a penis, that is by far the least offensive. He shrugged his shoulders and said, 3 strikes now, I've got other customers. It was the wee hours on a weeknight, and I was the only person in his 4 square metre kingdom. I could tell he was enjoying lording it over me, my finger-tapping telling of the need for nicotine, so I succumbed. Took the arsehole-looking image from the arsehole fucking dickhead and accepted my defeat with a thank you. Yeah, that's it from that one. That was one of those moments where I feel like with writing, it's a joy where you kind of get to live life twice, where you live the moment and then you write it down. And took that back of Backy from him, went outside, I was like, oh, I'm going to fucking just note that down. But in retrospect, yeah, it's not that cool, is it? I'm literally writing about my addiction to smoking, so I don't know. I'll finish with one that is very much, it's a poem that I only perform in Manchester. It's one of my favourites, but it's a shame. The joke's just, like, the references, no one gets it elsewhere. But I'm hoping that people will understand what I'm on about. Because do you think the pigeons in Islington look down on the ones from Piccadilly Gardens, who, hardened by the concrete plot, scoff on sick and haven't got a full set of toes? Or am I pigeonholing the avian Islingtonians as obnoxious new Mancunians, tarring them all with the same brush, branding them homogeneously posh because they nest in the M4 postcode? Surely, though, you've noticed that the pigeons are different? It can't just be their diet, although it is a flex to get to Peckham pollen sourdough without the need to buy it. I'm undecided if the central flock have ever even tried it. I reckon they've got to be invited, because if looks are anything to go by, These birds are divided. They might all fly in the same sky, but there are no flights of fancy over Great Ancoat Street, which seems to me to be the boundary of squab society, delineating the downtrodden and often trodden on from the urban bird elite. But who decided which kit got what bits of the city? Well, a little bird told me that our footless friends of Piccadilly were deemed too ugly by UAE investors when they furtively funded council plans for the new Islington development. Deemed a feather deterrent for the intended creative class of resident, the pigeons were ousted by the council at some oil baron's insistence. Swathes of evictions sparked out of season migration for families of pigeons who'd been at the marina for generations. The unjust relocation to Piccadilly pastures new made palatable by the title urban regeneration, when really it was just a means to displace them, to make way for the Columbia bourgeoisie and their disposable income. And this all happened at a rate so rapid that the new neighbourhood is less organic than the bread served at the countless fledgling cafes. Fast-paced change has created a piecemeal place with space allocated to make the most money. Rubbing a separatist underbelly, the urban design focused on the few, not the many. And to really squeeze out the pennies, they designated the creation of community space as low priority. It's a choice that leaves paltry places for distinct groups to gather and makes the hanging out together more difficult than ever. It's a choice that extends the existent loss of hubs, as most pigeon pubs didn't survive the bird flu infestation. It's a choice that limits the potential for connection and perpetuates segregation. So if the birds have decided to engage in tribalism, I don't blame them. Since that first appearance-based decision, they've had to live in constant competition. Spurred on by suspicion, they only relate in opposition. They don't see what is. They solely see what isn't. If, in the face of capitalism, the birds have forgotten their communion, then who are we to judge them? Are we any different? Do you think there are people in Islington who look down on the ones from Piccadilly Gardens? Thanks so much for listening, guys. I've been Piswan.
Guys, can we do another round of applause?